And Across Africa continues with our Arise News contributor, Frankie Edozien. Hey, Frankie.
Hi, Debbie.
Good to see you.
Good evening.
Man, take a deep breath because we got a whole lot to talk about. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, so let's start with you reported on this French journalist who was kept as a hostage, escaped.
Yes, Francis Colomb. We talked about that last week, and one of the things that you asked was like, how did he get away?
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's 63 years old. He's an engineer. He was captured. He was taken very far away. But you know, devout Muslims have to pray 5 times a day. And before they pray, they have to do what's called ablutions, which is basically washing the hands and the feet and the face and getting ready for prayer. And one of his guards left to do the ablutions and left the key in the door. So he had told, after he had been debriefed and taken care of in France, he had told journalists that he had a foreboding that things weren't going to go well. He had heard about the journalist who had been killed in Mali, and he was looking for any means to escape. He had been pacing his cell, walking miles and miles, just in case he had an opportunity to get out so he could keep walking. So once that happened, he left the cell. It was actually a dungeon, locked the door as if he was still in there, and then quietly got into the street and started to walk really, really fast. And then he hailed a Okada, which is a motorcycle taxi, and took himself to the police station.
That is absolutely incredible, and what nerve that takes.
I know. He said he had, he had this feeling that something was going to happen. And so he was pacing so that he could have the energy in case he did get out. And he did get out. So it is one of, not just good news for him, but the ability to be able to keep his wits about him, because, he was held for almost 10 months. Mm-hmm. It had been a long time. And then he had been moved 100 miles away to Zaire from where he had been kept in Kano. So it's a very, very long distance, and he absolutely, didn't know where he was, but he's safe in France now.
Smart, brave, brave man. I suspect a book and a movie will come out.
Yes. And spry, like you described him. I remember last week I had said, he's 60 years old, and you was like, well,
Hey, you never know. You can't judge by the number, that's for sure. Mm-hmm. And then this is just an awful, awful story about attacks on villages by extremists in Nigeria.
Yes. So a couple of weeks ago, we had been talking about how Boko Haram had really been pushed out of the big cities, one by the joint task force that Nigeria's military has, but also by civilians who had been fed up. Now, the ramifications of that is that they have now gone deeper and deeper into the villages. And people in the villages are, for the most part, herdsmen, they're farmers, rice and grain, and basically they have nowhere else to go. And so what they're doing is they're taking over these villages, and in very, very vicious ways, they are slitting the throats of young people who refuse to join them. One of the sad things about that is that people who are Muslim, when you slit a throat, it's how you kill an animal that you want to eat or you have no respect for. And so they're not using gunfire anymore because they don't want to rouse suspicion or for people to know that they're there. So they're doing this really, really quietly, but that's because they've been pushed out of the big cities. Unfortunately, tens of thousands of people have nowhere else to go. People have fled to the big cities, but those who can't absolutely leave are now bearing the brunt of the Boko Haram.
And did I read correctly that part of the reason they're doing this is to discourage the villagers from cooperating with the government's effort to squash their attacks?
Yes, because in the big cities, the government has succeeded in getting the civilian joint task force people and paying them and say, look, these people haven't done anything for you. Come with us and let's get them out. Now, in the villages, they're not even giving them a choice. They're like, you're with us or you die.
It's so awful.
So it's really sort of chilling, but unfortunately, the next frontier is this really, really, really provincial rural villages. One of the villages that they attacked, there's nothing there but farmland and a primary school, because they forced a lot of people out of the secondary schools.
We talked about this so often. We got to move on and talk about your next subject, but it just seems so senseless. It just makes no sense to me. This does make sense. 5 pled guilty with the seizure of a cocaine ship.
We've talked about how West Africa, that entire Gulf of Guinea coast, has now become a really, really major trade route for smuggling drugs. And in Ghana, a ship that came into Ghana's territorial waters had 800 pounds of cocaine in it. This is about $50 million worth of cocaine. 1 Ghanaian and 4 Guyanese nationals were arrested. This is a major problem for the region because if you look at all the things that are going on in West Africa, drug addiction is not really high on the list. So this is just a transfer port because they feel like the ports there and the waters there are less secure and it's easier to bring cocaine through West Africa from Latin America into America or Europe. Mm-hmm. And the American government is sensitive to this. So this past summer, they sent naval people to help local authorities fish out these things. And now we're seeing the fruit of that because they got 50 million pounds of cocaine the other day off the coast of Ghana.
Yeah, incredible. Let's keep moving so we can get through what we have in the time that we have. Interesting trial going on in South Africa.
Yes, so this is really actually, it's a very sad case. A career diplomat was killed in January by a commercial sex worker in Johannesburg. She says that he came at her with a baseball bat and she stabbed him to death. We really don't know the particulars of what happened, but we know that Norm Bates was his name, and he had worked for the State Department for 11 years. She herself is a prostitute, and it's illegal, to have prostitution in South Africa. Mr. Bates himself, apparently we know that he had been in many missions in Africa, and the State Department is saying that they're monitoring the trial, but that diplomats aren't allowed to engage in that kind of activity. Mm-hmm. She says that she was in fear of her life, that they had an agreement, a $20 agreement, but somehow or the other he tried to kill her with a baseball bat, so she stabbed him to death.
Oh, yeah.
So the trial is just beginning this week in Johannesburg, so we'll be watching that.
Okay, yeah, keep us posted on that. And before we let you go, I understand there's some Nelson Mandela mementos that are going to be auctioned off. What are we talking about?
These are beautiful pictures of him with Muhammad Ali. The actual speech he gave when he was being sentenced way back in 1964, pictures of him coming out of jail with his ex-wife, Winnie Mandela, and lots of things that he has signed over the years. This is the largest collection in recent time of any mementos belonging to the Madiba that are going to be on the auction block. They have all been authenticated, and many of them signed by various celebrities. So this is coming at a good time because we know the Madiba is not doing very well, and people who have held on to his stuff are saying maybe this is a time to share some of those things with the public. So that is going to go on sale later this week.
Very special to those who end up with those,
yes.
I'm sure. All right, Frankie, thank you so much.
Thank you, Debbie.
We'll see you later.
Okay.
And you're watching Arise America.